I think at this time, this is a choice point for all of us, individually and collectively. There is so much transformation going on between now and December that can give us the tools, the energetics, and the ability to move with ease and grace through these changes, to rebirth ourselves as new people in a very different way. Hello, Karen here, Soul Symbols, Astrology and Tarot, and I'm here to talk to you today about the Mars in Scorpio square Pluto in Aquarius, and to put that in context of what is happening in our sky and how we can work with that, really. We need to know how we can bring these huge transits going on in our sky down to the practical, down to our everyday. So Mars, it's in this square and it is a closing square. We have a synodic cycle where Pluto and Mars began on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day 2024. You probably remember Valentine's Day. That was the day they conjuncted 0 degrees of Aquarius. Okay, so they started there, and then they moved into a square. Mars was in an inferior square to Pluto at 1 degrees Taurus, and Pluto was retrograde at this time. Then we had the opposition on the 2nd of November 2024, and that opposition happened with Mars in Cancer and Pluto in Capricorn. It was in retrograde again. And this last square on the 24th of September, but it will be something that will be affecting the whole week. You'll feel the energies of it for the full week. Mars is in the superior square here, so Mars is putting that pressure on the Pluto. Okay, and that's 1 degrees of Scorpio and 1 degrees of Aquarius where Pluto is. So this dynamic of Mars and Pluto is a death and rebirth struggle. It's very powerful. If we look back over the cycle, we can see the aggression of Mars. We can see the power plays globally in terms of power over, or those who have felt oppressed and been victims of violence, slaughter. It's been ongoing for all this time, all across the world. Okay, we have seen power struggles politically in our different countries. We've seen people, Pluto in Aquarius, the people getting angry about their lack of, while people with lots of money have got more money than they need. And corporate, that corporate capture, I think people have been feeling that division between the two. So we have all this going on, but it is death and rebirth. Now, water is esoterically, it is the west. So it is the setting sun. It is where the sun goes down. Okay. So this is a closing square. It is a finishing off of a cycle. Another 6 months, haven't got the date up here. It will begin a new synodic cycle, and hopefully a less aggressive, not nice cycle. But if we look at Mars in Scorpio, Mars is very happy there. It's his temple. He rules there. It's his domain. He'll carry out what he wants to do there with no problem. Okay. And I see that Scorpio energy, the water energy, is the plumbing, as the deep waters, but I see it as active water. Mars is calling for action. So if we think of water in the landscape, it's the water that changes the landscape. So years of water rubbing against rock will shape the rock. It cuts canyons. It changes the landscapes where the rivers are. We have Mars in Scorpio reminds me of rapids, waterfalls, kind of really active, almost like aggressive, fierce water. It can be that deluge of water and the flooding of the landscape, which brings difficulty and changes the landscape. But if we bring that down to ourselves, we're talking about our emotional flow. We're talking about our intuition. We're talking about the way we're connecting and flowing with other people, our families, our friends, communities. So there's that sense of Mars in Scorpio changing our deep waters, okay? Our deep waters. Scorpio is the death card. So it's ending those patterns that are destructive. So the floods of emotions, the eruption of emotions. And this can happen with Mars and Pluto. But Mars is asking for constructive change, constructive action within ourselves than out in the world. This is happening right off the back of the solar eclipse in Virgo. We had the lunar eclipse in that cycle in Pisces, water again, and then we've had this second new moon in Virgo. And it's been a karmic cycle. It's been the end of karmic cycles and the beginning of new. So I think we're being invited to look at ourselves internally, look at how we relate outside. How are we on an emotional level? Are we using our emotions constructively, filtering any anger or passion into productive change in action that can change things? I mean, if I get angry, housework's the good thing. And I'm not a lover of housework. So if I get angry, I find that a boon. I mean, it's very simple, but how do you channel that aggression, that passion, that anger? I don't see any emotion as negative, but it's what we do with that emotion. Okay. So be open over this period of this week for people to be having emotional eruptions. Okay. Maybe expressing aggression towards you, maybe just emotionally volatile. I said it's the death rebirth struggle. It's like the clash of the titans. It's an aggressive war in that sense, but we can transmute that. Water is dissolution. Alchemy, it will dissolve. Okay, so we have that energy of dissolution. So if we're looking at our behavior patterns, especially on those dates I mentioned, because it would have been highlighted, we have opportunities to be more constructive, to allow our flow to change our inner and outer landscapes. We do the work on the inside, it impacts the outside. And it's that plumbing, our emotional plumbing. So we're being asked to have a look at our emotional plumbing and kind of maybe change the pipe system a bit, redirect the pipe system into productive areas. Water is just fertility, it grows things. We need water to live. So it's very important. And this Scorpio is a transformative sign. Scorpio, we start with a scorpion with a sting in its tail. We end up with an eagle and a phoenix. So it's going from that depth to that height to get perspective on everything. It's but part of a bigger picture of the rest of 2025. So Scorpio is going to be the place of all those grand water trines. We have Jupiter in Cancer, we have Saturn in Pisces, and then we will have Mercury, Mars, the Sun, and Venus. And Mercury will make several passes, and they will be happening all throughout October, November, and December. But this is an opportunity now to have a look at, what comes up for you, what is stirring you up, what makes you passionate, what makes you aggressive, what's going on in the world. You're like, it's really having a look at how are we acting out in the world? Are we changing the landscape in terms of our actions in our local communities, in our families, globally even? It depends where your realm is, but like, how are we changing that? And we all have the ability to affect globally because of our internet, because we are connected with people via social media, and we can add to aggression, or we can detract, we can be peacemakers, or we can be reconcilers, or we can use our emotional intelligence, and we can use that to bring that stability there, a different view, a different way of thinking. If you're into the social media on personally, I'm not very much, but if you are, you can make the difference there. And of course, the other thing we need to look at with Mars in Scorpio is that, it's a water sign. So we have the triplicity rulers being Venus, Mars, and the moon. So we have that sense within this sign of Venus looking for that harmony, for that balance, for that beauty, the aesthetics of life, where we want our pleasure and we want our satisfaction. So it's bringing about those things, and with the sun moving into Libra, Venus sign, later today, there's that need, that kind of life force, that balance of that beauty and that harmony. It becomes very important within Scorpio. So we don't want our water spilling out and ruining the furniture, or a deluge on the landscape that's going to take a long time to mop up. So emotionally, it's having that mastery over that emotional flow within you and without. We can be responsible for our own responses. There may be aggression coming towards us in some form or another this week, but what we can do, adequately do, is have mastery over how we respond. We cannot control the outside, but we can control our responses. And then, of course, the moon is a triplicity. We've talked about Mars being the active ingredient, okay, action, solid action in the world. But the moon is that changing face. So our circumstances fluctuate, they change. We can lose hope in these times because of the amount of divisiveness, the amount of aggression, out in the world, the amount of power and influence that very few people have, and the ignorance of what we as a collective want out in the world. And that can stimulate a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of emotion. But we can be responsible for how we express that, Libra, the sun in Libra air, how we express that, what we say. And we can bring beauty into those exchanges. We can bring balance into those exchanges. We can bring the beauty and balance into our actions out in the world. I think at this time, this is a choice point for all of us, individually and collectively. There is so much transformation going on between now and December that can give us the tools, the energetics, and the ability to move with ease and grace through these changes, to rebirth ourselves as new people in a very different way. On the 22nd, the sun is going to move into Libra. Okay. And that is going to create a grand air trine, which will last throughout this week. And that is the sun in Libra. Then it will be Pluto in Aquarius, and it will be Uranus in Gemini air. So that's going to make that lovely trine. Okay, so ease and flow, as I said, with that trine. So the archetypes are all intertwining. So this is a powerful one with the sun, and it's moved into Libra, and Libra on the back of that solar eclipse, which is the change. Virgo's asking for purity, for devotion, for, in our day to day, our bodies, our health, how we move through our day. Okay, it's that kind of purifying, refining, making that area of our charts more powerful. And our bodies are our temples. I'm telling myself this, okay? Our bodies are our temples. We need to look after them. service, acts of service, being devoted to your spiritual devotion or your devotion to your projects, all these things are really important. That's the Virgo new beginning. Okay, that was a karmic reset and beginning. So we have this Saturn, Pluto, then we're going to have this air trine. Now, the air is the east, it's where the sun rises, okay? Water, the west, where the sun goes down. So, looking at those things with Mars and Pluto, well, Mars specifically, Mars in Scorpio, are waters. What we're doing with those waters, how we're uh, redoing the plumbing there so the water flows better and doesn't come out in a big burst and eruption. Have a look at places you may find this week people have emotional explosions. Okay, be aware that that can happen. If you observe your emotions, you can then channel them. But then we have this air trine. Now the air is east, as I said, it's new beginnings. It's where the sun comes up. It's all part of this picture of reset, massive reset. Okay. Now, air, we are talking. We are talking about expression. We are talking about communication, our thinking, the breath. It's about spirit. Air is yeah, it's movement, but it's often movement we can't see. It's like the wind, isn't it? You can only see the wind when it sways the trees or you feel it on your face. So we got nebulous quality to it that you may not see, but it's going on. So it's a time to have a look at our minds. Sun going into Libra. Libra is about the judgment, okay? It's about judging what we've done. It's the equinox, equal balance. It's Ma'at, the Egyptian god with the scales that weighed your heart against a feather. So we're being asked to look here in this air energy. How are we expressing? Are we in our global communities online and we are expressing our anger, expressing our outrage, and we are fueling division? We are contributing to this huge division. We need to connect as people. We can debate. Debate is good. You don't have to agree with people, debate, but have a look at your communication, particularly when we're looking at these huge political divisions. We've seen some awful things happening through that. So it's like, how are we contributing to that division? Are we bringing balm there? Are we using our water energy, our emotional intelligence to communicate with respect, with compassion, with love? And that's not just online, that can be anywhere. Don't get caught up in that divisiveness because we are being brought together as a whole, as a collective consciousness, as humanity to lift one another up. Water's to do with compassion. Okay, so compassionate words, compassionate thoughts. Just do your inner work. If you're like fuming and you're offended by people's words and their sentiments, then drop down inside, find why you're triggered by that, because we're only triggered when we have an inner issue there. So that is how we can use and work with that air trine. It is all of this week is all feeding into a greater new beginning. So it's looking at ourselves, aligning, balancing ourselves, Libra, Sun in Libra, balancing ourselves. Pluto's in Aries, this can be about power dynamics. Have a look at the power dynamics. Are you feeling empowered? Are you feeling disempowered? Is there anger coming out of that that's going to offshoot this with the Pluto and Mars square? That's tension. Okay, that's tension. That's conflict. That can be. So we can look at those things in terms of that air energy. How do we express? Are we able to speak in the situations that we're in? Are we with people who are overbearing, who are not? having any respect for our views, our opinions? Do we need to do some work on our confidence in order to speak out, to self-express? I see air as well to do with the sound, what we're hearing. So are our voices heard? Is your voice heard? Have you got something to express? Are you being challenged into a new beginning to use that Mars energy, that power, okay, and courage and push out into the world to make concrete action in the world that's going to bring about change? And then finally, we are going to have that groundwater trine, and I will do a lot more on that as it comes. I mean, this is gonna, I think it's the end of October. This is taking over, but that will be there until 6th of December. Okay. Now, the gnarliness that we have now, I think we will have difficulty this week globally and perhaps in our personal lives, but if we are doing our inner work, we sometimes can't control what's going on outside, but we have mastery over how we respond. So we can either match their aggressive energy for aggressive energy, or we can take a step back, we can think, we can analyze, we can look at both sides of a situation, and we can offer good advice, or we can try and debate. You may need to pull back from some relationships and some situations because they are flooding the landscape and destroying your crops, your fertility. Okay. We are being called to make balanced decisions, to take balanced action, okay, to be aware of our inner narrative, to be aware of where we put ourselves down, where we're not speaking up enough, where we are stopping ourselves moving out in creative action, because this it is the clash of the titans. Is Mars and Pluto, okay? It is a death and rebirth struggle. Scorpio is the tarot card of death. Then- and then we've got Aquarius, which is the star. So that is our hope. Our hope is to be strong, active individuals, but recognize that we are part of a collective, and that everything we do, we think, we feel, we act out in the world will have either a positive or a negative effect. And negative, I mean, in that it will contribute to division, to aggression, to the shadow aspects of those archetypes of Pluto and Mars. Okay, I hope that was helpful to you. Hope you can get something from it. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, comment, share with others if you think it will be helpful to anyone else. If you want an astrology reading, a tarot reading, pop over to my website, www.soulsymbols.co.uk. Okay, bye bye, everyone.